Barb, it is so good to have you here on Out of the Mouths. We are really looking forward to hearing your story straight from you about your personal adoption. And so, why don't we get started by finding out a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up?
Okay, so I grew up in Massachusetts. Um, I grew up with one other adopted brother, mom, dad, adopted brother, in a small little hometown. Um, we owned a small family business, a restaurant that I worked at when I was 19 years old. I worked there for like 30 years. Yeah, and then I jumped around from like job to job. I always had like three jobs, it seemed like, and I liked that. And then when I had three jobs, I was approached and got offered my current position now, which is financial planning, which I kind of laughed at because I thought, well, I have three jobs. How many can I do? So I did end up interviewing for that, accepted that job, and now that's what I do. I've been doing that for 10 years. First time I've ever had one job, which I love. Um, and yeah, and I have one child. I have Jacob, who's 13, who's amazing. Um, and that's a little bit about my background.
So, as you were growing up, was it evident to you that you were adopted?
So interestingly, my parents I don't know when they told us because we always knew. And I thought that was really smart because it was never like this big thing. We had friends, like I actually had a friend who lived down the street that no one ever told him. So he was like devastated when he found out. And I've heard a lot of that many times that people were like freaked out. So for us, we always knew. So it was never like this big deal. Um, and they kind of were like, "Oh, well, we wanted you so bad, like, we paid big money for you." And yeah, so my brother was adopted first. He's older than me, and the story goes is that they adopted him, and he was actually very sickly. They're like, "No, you can't have." He actually, let me backtrack. He was like 2 years old when they went to the adoption agency, and he walked out and waved to them, and they fell in love. They're like, "We want him," and they're like, "No, you can't have him because he's anemic." He was really sick and he was so cute. He had this really big head and a scrawny little body, and they fought for him and got him. And then they said that, they went back there to adopt me and he like pointed to me and they're like, that he picked me. I don't know if that's true. That's cute. My
Your
mom.
brother also picked you.
Yeah, yes. So I got picked twice, which was nice. So, yeah. So, and then my mom nursed him back to health. So he's totally fine now.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And so, how old were you when that all happened?
Yeah, so I was 6 months old. I never really had an interest to like look into my history. I figured like if my mom and father didn't want me, then I don't want to intrude. But then I was like, if they ever want to meet me, that's fine. But I would never want to like force myself on them. So I never kind of like looked into it. And then my cousin kind of pushed me to get my records open because so I was told my whole life I was Italian, 100% Italian, but I was actually Italian and Cuban. So she thought that I deserved to know that part of my story. So she would always push me to open my records. And then at one point, I had a boyfriend who felt the same way, like, you need to do it, you need to do it. So they kind of encouraged me to do that. And I did that and found out that I was half Cuban and that I had a half brother named Daniel. And the other thing that was pretty wild was that on the top of the paper, it said Lisa Marie. And I'm like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "That's your real name." So I didn't know that I was renamed. So that was kind of like, you know what I mean? That was really mind blowing. So the thing is, though, like, I didn't know going in there, like, I couldn't take anything with me. And I they just gave me like a pen and paper. So I just kind of jotted down as much as I could about them, like what my mom was like into computers. She worked for computers and she was like Italian, and my father was a Cuban refugee construction worker. So there wasn't like a lot of stuff, but I was just jotting everything down, and it felt kind of rushed. So then I don't know, didn't really think too much about it. But years later, I kinda got sick of hearing, like, the doctor say, "What's your medical history?" And I didn't know it, so that was kinda like a big push for me to find out my medical history. And then I thought, "Well, what if, like, my father's Burt Reynolds or something? He's filthy rich." He feels bad he gave me up. So, I went to reopen my records, and they were, like, gone, like, disappeared. I know. So and I had got them originally, like, right at the town hall. So I went back there, they were completely gone, they couldn't find them, so they sent me to this other place, like, the main place where the records would be. I think it was, like, in Boston, and, completely gone. There's no record of you, it's like you don't exist. So I was like, okay, so that's kind of weird. So I thought, okay, maybe God's just shutting this down for some reason. I don't, it just made like no sense. So then I had a client from the restaurant come in and he had just found his birth family and it was like the greatest thing in his life. So he's like, Barb, you got to find out, you got to find out. And my sister does this. She will find your family. So I said, okay, good luck. So she looked, couldn't find nothing, dead end. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. So then my best friend's husband was a private eye. He's like, I can find them for you. So like, okay, here's my information. Nothing, like completely gone. So I'm just like, okay, it's just not, it's just for some reason God doesn't want me to do this. And I was fine with that. And that just kind of was the end of that. I never really gave it a second thought. And now I'm like in my 50s. So I'll backtrack. When I was looking, I was probably like 28. Yeah, I was like 28, 30 years old. So 20 years passed. I get this letter in the mail and it's from the Home for Little Wanderers, which is where I came from. And it was a letter saying that they believed my birth mother was looking for me, and they didn't know if I would be interested in going down that road. And if I was, there was my caseworker and a phone number to call. So I did call. I called her. She was really sweet, and she said, this is very rare. Parents don't usually look for children. It's usually the other way around. So I was like, yay, mom. Like, that's cool. So she's like, I don't know if you're bitter or you're angry, if you want to meet her. And I'm like, I'm not bitter or anything or angry. If anything, like, I'm grateful. Like, she could have aborted me. So I was always like very grateful that she didn't just kill me. Right. So I said, no, I definitely would love to meet her. Like, and then I'm like, but she said, well, she's older, she's 84. So I'm like, okay, can we speed up this process? Because I don't want anything to happen to her. Because she said it was like a long process. I said, well, now that she's reaching out to me, I would like to speed up the process. And she was an hour and a half away. Like, I'm in Massachusetts, she was in New Hampshire. So we ended up starting out with a phone call. She's like, would you like to talk to her on the phone? I said, absolutely. So she called me and she was super sweet. And then I came to find out that I had a sister. I had two sisters and a brother. And it was really my younger sister that found me because she was a reporter. And I don't know how she found me, but she ended up finding me. So then I went to New Hampshire and met my sister who found me and my mother for lunch. And it was like we always met, like knew each other. It wasn't weird. I brought flowers and then we just went out for like girls' day lunch and it was like awesome. Yeah, it was so good. And then my little sister ended up having me and my son Jacob and my ex-husband Shane over for Thanksgiving. And then I met my brother and my sister-in-law. And then my brother had a chalet in Maine skiing, so he invited me and Jacob up for skiing. And then I met my other sister and her three children. So now go from like having a very small family because my adopted parents have passed. So it was just kind of like me and my brother to like having another brother, two sisters, cousin, nieces, nephews, in-laws, like whole big family. So we ended up spending Thanksgiving together and Christmas together. Yeah, and it's been like my mom calls me all the time now, and she's super sweet, tells me how much she misses me and loves me. And she was like, I think she had a harder time with the adoption than me. Like I think it like really messed her up. Like she never forgave herself. But I have come to find out that it was really God's hand sparing me because my siblings, I guess, didn't have like an easy childhood. It was very rough. Like my older brother and my older sister got put in foster care. Um, and my younger sister was the only one that stayed with her. But unfortunately, like my mom was in some abusive relationships, so it wasn't good. And I don't even know, I know like the foster care and the abusive relationships had did kind of a number on them. So I feel like God kind of really spared me all that. And then I feel like he kind of brought it full circle for me to meet them because like I'm really into God and the healing of God is so important. I feel like that he brought us all together so that I could bring that aspect to them. So yeah, they've come to church with me and yeah, it's been really, really good. And now both my adopted parents have passed away. So now I'm back for a while there I had two moms. It was so weird because I would like say to my brother, my adopted brother, like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see mom, my New Hampshire mom." Or my friends would be, "Which mom, Mass mom or New Hampshire mom?" So that was kind of like wild. Because I'm like, for a while there, I felt like I had no parents going to heaven, like two mothers, and
So, when you were in that situation with two moms, you have
yeah,
both these women in your life. Did you struggle with how to navigate, how to talk about them
yeah,
to each other, or?
yeah. So my adopted mom never found out about me meeting my biological mother. She was always very much against this, very much against this. So never even told her it happened. It would have devastated her. My biological mother obviously knew about my adopted mother, wanted to meet her and everything, wanted to meet the whole family, but it just she was something she couldn't handle, so that never got brought up to her. And sadly, like, so when I was a young child, I remember sitting in the car, and my mom said to me, my adopted mom said to me, you know, your brother's mother wanted him so bad, but she was only 16 and she couldn't afford him, and your mother just didn't want you. And I thought in my little brain, like that's a horrible thing to say. You know what I mean? To a kid, like, and I kind of just rejected that. I knew, like, okay, not appropriate to say to me. And honestly, I heard God in the background saying, I want you. I wanted you. I've always wanted you. And I just felt like I've always felt love from God, like even as a little girl, like always. I always had like that gift for some reason. And then so meeting my real mom, she told me the real story was she was in an abusive relationship and she didn't feel like it was safe for me. And then she didn't want me to go through any type of abuse. So, and she kind of was pressured to give me up for adoption. Like my real dad didn't want to be a dad. And then, so they went to the agency to kind of look into the adoption and it wasn't something she wanted to do, but then they were like pressuring her. And she said she never would forget seeing me like sitting on the table and they were like, sign here, sign her. And she said after that, she like shut everything out. She forgot. She just like kind of erased. She forgot where I was born, when I was born. So when my little sister was looking for me, she's just like, I don't remember anything. I like blocked that out because it's too devastating. So it was totally like a miracle. My sister found me because my mom didn't even remember what hospital she had me in.
Wow.
And I felt so bad for her because she was in tears. And I'm like, it's okay, mom. Like I like ended up having a very blessed life. Like I love my life. Like without the adoption, there'd be no Jacob. I wouldn't even know you. You know what I mean? Like, and I think I have like the greatest life, and I don't even know what kind of childhood I would have grown up in. So, for me, it was a big blessing. But I don't think you should tell children they're not wanted, especially when you don't know the story. Like, I don't know where that came from, but you know, it's everybody's broken, and somehow maybe that was told to her. I don't know. Maybe that was told to her.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, all of us have parents who are imperfect,
yeah,
one way or the other, whether they adopt their children, have them biologically, right? We're all imperfect and we
yeah,
say stupid things, but
yeah,
it's important to be careful, especially with children who are adopted
yeah.
or in foster care, not to project why a situation happened,
It's true.
and
It's
it's
true.
99.9% of the time it's not because they're not wanted and loved, right? It's because of other circumstances, as you came to find out.
Yeah, 1,000%. One thing they did say, which was very nice, was like, like we wanted you so much. We spent like, I don't know, like it was $10,000 to have a kid back then. We spent $10,000 to buy you. Like we just wanted you so much. So I never felt like unwanted in that aspect. But yeah. So I guess you have to. But I always says like, you know what? Like you said, everyone's broken. They did the best they could. Like they gave me like a nice childhood, a nice home, a nice safe home. Like like I said, I wouldn't change anything I like of my life.
Right.
So
And it's beautiful to see how God did spare you from things that you
I
found
know.
out later were probably going to be your life if your mother, your birth mother, didn't do
Yeah,
that very loving act.
I know.
That must have been very difficult for her. I mean, obviously, the way she responded by having to kind of disassociate from it
Yeah.
shows just how much she did
Yeah.
love you.
Yeah, she was traumatized.
Yeah. And how beautiful that God reunited you
I
back
know,
at a
and
time when you could all be healthy
I
and
know.
more healed
Yeah.
to have a relationship.
And little Jacob got like instant family, another uncle, aunts, and cousins, and my sister I had taken away like at work. Like we have this really special like ballroom event called Hundreds Club, and you can bring guests. So I brought my sister, and we stayed overnight. So that was like a great bonding experience. And then yeah, Jacob ended up with like instant family, which is just wild.
Wow.
So yeah,
Now, you mentioned your half siblings,
yeah,
right, from your birth side.
yeah.
Did they know about you at all, or until this didn't come about until
Yeah.
everybody was an adult?
Nobody knew about me, and unfortunately, my mom was in like I think another dysfunctional marriage, and the husband at the time got drunk at a Christmas party. Said, "Oh, you think your mom's so perfect, but you don't know about the sister she threw away."
Oh,
So that's how all this my little sister was like, "Wait, what? I have a sister?" And that's how it leaked out, which is at the end of the day, a good thing. Like I think, like what Satan meant for her harm, God spun for her good. So, so
Yeah.
yeah, then my sister
So
found me.
that's crazy.
That's
How,
crazy,
yeah,
right? Like,
how something that was meant to be
I
hurtful
know.
turned out to be like, well, the truth came out.
Yep.
And we always want the truth to come out into the light, and that's where God heals things.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
I know, that is amazing. I felt bad for her. She was traumatized, but my cousin was like really smart. She's like, I had a baby book with like years of my life. She's like, you should bring your baby book so she can, and she cherished that because she got to see like every aspect of my life that she missed out on. Yeah, so that was like really wise on her part.
That is.
Yeah.
So speaking of wise decisions in the when you're involved in adoption, what are some things from your experience that you would advise an adoptive family, an adoptive mom or dad, to do for their adopted child that you think you wish had been done for you or that you really did appreciate?
Um, I totally appreciated knowing from like day one, whenever like I had that type of ability to comprehend what they were saying. So I think always saying it, not just having it be some like devastating news. So honesty obviously is the best policy. But and then I would say like not to deter your child from finding their parents. Like I would say like be supportive whatever their decision is. I wouldn't push them either way. Like if you want to do that, that's totally fine. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine too. Like my mom was like dead set against it, and so it wasn't something like when it happened I could share with her, you know.
That's sad.
Yeah, it is sad because it's like honestly, they both could have thanked each other. Like one of them raised me and the other one didn't abort me. Like we could have had some like real gratefulness here. Like everyone played such an important role in my life, and so yeah, I would say be supportive on whatever the child wants to do.
Mhm.
And I would say like view it as a good thing because it is a good thing, like
Do you think, um, looking back, do you wish you could have had a relationship with your half biological siblings?
yeah, I wish I met them earlier. Definitely. I wish I met mother early because now she's older and she's getting a little like forgetful and, not as healthy as she used to be. And I think they used to all go on family trips. We definitely would have went on.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
But then your adoptive mom, that was just too emotional for her,
yeah, so
probably.
that's probably why God didn't bring them into, yeah, it's probably the timing was perfect, that God saw the big picture that this could be really devastating to her.
Right.
So, and I don't remember my father having an opinion either way about it. It was more my mom was very like, nope.
Yeah, I was curious about that because
Yeah.
dads are often not in the picture when it comes to foster care, adoption.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they're involved, sometimes they're not. So, do you want to share a little bit about your birth dad and adopted dads?
Yeah, so my adopted dad, he was a truck driver, and I'm assuming they both agreed on this. And he didn't really I don't recall him ever having an opinion one way or the other. I don't remember him talking about it much. It was just, it is what it was. He didn't really, he never acted or like we were adopted kids. We were always his. And they both were. And it always felt like we just belonged to them. And then my biological dad, my sister was going to try to find him, but they suspect he might be dead. They don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't
And
really get to know him.
your birth mom and birth dad didn't stay together after you were
No, but
adopted.
I found out that I guess I lived with them for 4 months and I never knew that. Yeah, or right before we lived in, then right before I was adopted, I did stay with them. And that was one thing I do remember. That was one thing that I was curious as a child. I always said to myself, like, did I cry too much? Like, why did they get rid of me? That was a question. Like, yeah, like, I wonder what happened. Wasn't my fault. Like, babies cry. Like, I just remember thinking that, but it never like messed me up. I never felt unwanted, and I know that's because like God always made me feel very special. Like even as like a little girl, I always felt like really special, and I always knew God had my back, so I didn't struggle with that
Yeah.
type of rejection stuff. So that was good.
I think that's an important thing to communicate is that God created us,
Yeah.
whether we stay with our biological families or we're adopted into a different family or however our life pans out.
Yeah.
God is the one who created us to begin with, so we've been wanted since day one, regardless of the situation that we're born into.
Yeah.
So, and He works it out one way or the other, and that's totally evident in your story.
Yeah, like I totally love the way he choreographed everything perfectly. And also like kind of blows my mind like that I've been adopted twice. Adopted into his family, adopted into so I have like this spiritual example being adopted as a child of God, and then I have this physical example being adopted as in a a family. But For me, like the biggest thing is like I'm just so grateful like that my mom didn't abort me. Like nowadays we talk about, pro-choice. And it's just like that could have been me. And it's just like, and then there'd be no Jacob. That this there's such a domino effect that people don't think about. That's heartbreaking.
It's true. I think when women are in that situation and they're fed lies that this is going to
Yes,
fix their problem, they don't recognize all the future problems it will
absolutely.
create. Yeah. And all the generations that it affects. So you have that great example of this wonderful child who's the next generation because your mom chose life for you. That's beautiful.
It really is. And I remember hearing, I don't know if you heard our worship leader giving his story,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
that was always one thing. Like I know people say, well, incest or rape. And that was always one thing that I struggled with because I understand that that's got to be horrendous, but I still never had peace about just the abortion part. I'm like, well, there's adoption, there's adoption, there's adoption. And then getting that life example of our worship leader being a product of rape. And it's like, I can't imagine our church without him. He's
Right.
amazing.
Right.
So it's just so sad, like to think about all the lives that someone decided weren't worthy of living. You could have killed the solution to cancer. Like everybody brings something to the table. Like what have we decided and played God? That's so I'm so like aware of that could have been me.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to encourage my mom, like, you should have nothing to feel bad about. Like, you know what I mean? Nothing. You protected me. Yeah. And I ended up with such a good life. Like, yeah. So I'm so grateful.
So now, as an adult, you have your son, who is your biological son.
Yeah.
Has adoption ever crossed your mind for yourself?
It's funny. Like, I always thought if I ever came into like ridiculous amounts of money, I would like love to open an adoption agency.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that would be like so wild. So, yeah, I would definitely adopt. I would definitely would. Yeah. I mean, I would have had 10 kids if I knew like it was this much fun. Like I loved being pregnant. I loved having Jacob. I started out later in life though. I didn't get pregnant till I was 43, so a little bit late now for that, but I always, like when I meet someone, it's always like, oh, there's always adoption. If like somebody wanted to have a child and I'm a little bit too old for that, there's always adoption.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
just
and
it.
it works. I'm an example.
Right,
So,
exactly. That's a perfect example is
yeah.
you have a mother's heart and you would love to do that and
Yeah.
you never know what the future holds because there are children out there who need a mother. So you could be that. You never know.
I know. And it's like it's so perspective is everything, right? So it's so amazing how some people, you know, get pregnant and it's like, "Oh my gosh, my life is over," or, tragedy happens. But there's the silver lining is the baby. Like babies are amazing. Like children are like amazing. And I think until you have one, you don't know. Like honestly, I didn't know what love was till Jacob came into the picture.
Mhm.
Like that kid has taught me like real genuine love.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful. Like I'm so grateful that I got pregnant at 43 because I was one of those people like very content in whatever situation I'm in. Like, like unfortunately me and Jane, we had a couple of miscarriages. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's just not God's plan. And I wasn't like freaking out. Like a lot of my friends were like freaking out because they didn't have a baby and it was ruining them. And I was just like, if I have one, I have one. If I don't, I don't. I'm happy either way, whatever God plans for me. I'm very content. But I had no idea what I was missing out on. You know what I mean? I'm like, I thought I had 10 of these. And I so loved being pregnant. Like, I just loved it. I really did. And he was late. My baby was late. Jacob was like a few days late. And they were like, all right, we're going to do a C-section. I'm like, no, leave him alone. You're not ready. They're like, no, he's getting too big. So I'm like, okay.
And you're a little lady, so.
I know. And he was like now 9 pounds, 2 ounces. All the nurses were like, we want to see the biggest baby in the hospital. I'm like, he's over there.
And do you share your whole adoption story with your son?
Geez, that's a good question. I think he probably just nonchalantly knows. I don't know that we ever like I think he's always known. Everything's always been so casual and always known. But yes, he definitely knows because he knows he had two grandmas for a minute there.
Mhm.
And then he knows like yeah, he's got cousins now and yeah.
He might not know the details of the backstory, maybe.
Hmm, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of like me. I was adopted. It's not a big deal. And mom was adopted. Just not a big deal.
Right. It's normal for you.
Yeah, it's always super normal. It's nothing like crazy.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's
I will
amazing.
say though, like I did have a neighbor that was adopted and he was adopted by his aunt. And nobody ever told him and he didn't find out till he was older in life that his aunt was really his mother. And that really like messed him up. So I would always say, like, be honest as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Because finding out later in life is, I guess, probably a little traumatizing.
Right. And you feel like people in your life have been lying to you, and it makes you question a lot of
Yeah,
things in life.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, I was devastated when I found out there was Santa. I'm like, you guys lied to me? You just- So yeah, the
Yeah,
lying thing's
yeah,
not good.
yeah. Not good. No,
No.
no.
I think the other thing that's really, really important is like is for people to get education that it is a baby. It,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? It's not a baby. Like, and if you don't understand or know, then just there's plenty of material to educate yourself out there.
Hmm.
There's so much, and it's like, yeah, it's just sad, like what you hear they're doing. So yeah, not
Right,
good.
right. And there's a lot of lack of information on how it's going to affect the mother
Oh
when she
yes,
goes through an abortion.
1000%. I have a friend that is ruined to this day from it. She just
Hmm.
can't get over that she had an abortion. She can't
Hmm.
forgive herself.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is there's forgiveness. We've all made mistakes. God can forgive you for that. You know what I mean? But for some reason, that is a very hard hurdle to get over and to accept that type of forgiveness from God. Like, and she's a Christian and she can't forgive herself. I would say maybe be a big brother or big sister or find a child to spend some time with and just to see like, wow, this is actually really fun and really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because it's just, but it's this, I have to say, it's nothing like it's so different when it's your own child. There's just that bond and that love that's like, I see people who have these bonds with animals and they replace human beings with animals because animals give that unconditional love. It's the same thing. Jake's like a little puppy the way he loves, you know, you're gonna get, it's better, so yeah, I can't say enough about it.
Is there anything else you wanted to share about what it was like being adopted? Anything that's been like a hallmark kind of thing, knowing you're adopted?
I just think for me, like, the way God choreographed my life. Like, I think a lot about if I didn't get adopted, if I stayed with my biological family, or if I got adopted by a different family, like, this would not be my life. Like, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you. I would not have Jacob. I wouldn't have my career, which I love my career. I don't even know, like, I just don't even know where I'd be. So it's just, for me, I don't know, it's just so interesting. And I would say, when you're considering adopting, pray about it. Pray for it to be God's perfect will and to select the baby for you because he just has this way of intertwining everything like perfectly. Yeah. So,
Keep God's will first.
amen. Amen.
Hearing your story is you've got so much wisdom
Oh,
that
thanks.
other adoptive families can really learn from. I think it's so important to hear the perspective of people who were adopted and the good things that happened, the bad things that happened, how to learn from it. Being an adoptive family ourselves, this kind of information is so valuable to us.
Yeah.
We want to do what's right for our kids.
Yeah.
And we don't know until it comes right from you. So you sharing that with us is gold. And
Yeah.
we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know what's kind of hitting me the most right now? The most important thing is like, I was like this close to maybe being murdered.
Right.
So,
And you've got this beautiful life that
yeah,
you can appreciate.
I know.
Yeah.
And God lets me like bless other people.
Hmm.
So it's just, I would pray that people would think twice before taking that road and go down the adoption road. I can't say enough about it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.